Grandpa, tonight they're taking your fortune. I thought she was joking until the FBI knocked on my door.
The tapping on my bedroom window started at exactly 11:30 p.m. last Sunday night. At first, I thought it was tree branches in the autumn wind, but the sound was too rhythmic, too deliberate. I rolled over in my king-sized bed, the one Margaret and I had shared for 37 years before cancer took her 3 years ago. Tap, tap, tap. There it was again. I reached for my reading glasses on the nightstand, squinting through the darkness toward the first-floor window that faced the Mitchells' backyard next door. My son David's house, where my 9-year-old granddaughter Emma was supposed to be fast asleep. What I saw made my blood freeze. Emma's small face pressed against the glass, her blonde hair disheveled, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was still wearing her pink pajamas with unicorns on them, the ones I had bought her for her birthday last month. I stumbled to the window, my 74-year-old joints protesting after a day spent organizing my home office. The latch clicked as I opened the window, and Emma practically tumbled into my bedroom. "Grandpa Bob," she whispered, her voice shaking with fear and urgency. "You have to listen to me. Mom and Dad think I'm sleeping, but I heard everything." I knelt to her eye level, noting how her small hands trembled as she gripped my pajama sleeves. "Emma, sweetheart, what are you doing out of bed? How did you get over here?" I climbed down from my bedroom window and across the fence. Her words tumbled out in a rush. "Grandpa, they are having a meeting in the kitchen right now with papers spread everywhere. Big, important papers with your name on them." My chest tightened. "What kind of papers, honey?" "The scary kind. The kind that lawyers use." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Mom was on the phone with Dr. Martinez, and she kept saying things about tomorrow being the last day you would be free." Dr. Martinez. I did not recognize that name, but something cold settled in my stomach, like lead. Emma continued, her 9-year-old voice carrying burdens no child should bear. Dad kept asking, what if Grandpa finds out? And Mom said it would be too late by then. She said the doctor would write a report saying you are sick even though you are not sick. The room seemed to tilt sideways. I gripped the windowsill to steady myself, fighting to keep my expression calm for Emma's sake. In my 40-year career as a Microsoft software engineering executive, I had learned to read people, to recognize when someone was running a con. But I had never imagined my own family would target me. "What else did you hear, sweetheart?" I asked gently, though my mind raced with implications. "Mom said you have too much money for an old man living alone. She told Dad they were going to fix that problem tomorrow morning." Emma's tears started fresh. "Grandpa, I don't want them to take your money. You are the only one who really listens to me." I pulled her into a fierce hug, feeling her small body trembling against mine. For 3 years since Margaret's death, I had supported David and Jessica financially. Their mortgage payments, car loans, Emma's private school tuition at Riverside Academy, $125,000 of my retirement money, given out of love and trust. But love and trust, I was learning, could be the most dangerous weapons in the wrong hands. "Listen to me carefully," I whispered into her hair. "You did the right thing telling me, but we need to keep this our secret for now. Can you do that?" She nodded against my shoulder. "Are you going to stop them?" "Yes, sweetheart. I am going to handle everything." I held her at arm's length, making sure she could see the certainty in my eyes. "But we need to get you back home before they notice you are missing. Can you be brave for me?" "I think so." She wiped her eyes with determination, that reminded me painfully of Margaret during difficult times. "Grandpa, will you still love me if Mom and Dad get mad?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Emma, nothing your parents do could ever change how much I love you. Nothing. Do you understand? Relief flooded her face, the first genuine smile I had seen from her all evening. "I love you too, Grandpa." I helped her climb back through the window, watching until she safely reached her own bedroom across the yard. Only when her light went out did I close my window and sink into Margaret's reading chair. The house felt different now, charged with purpose and danger. I was no longer just a lonely widower missing his wife. I was prey that had just discovered the hunters were already inside the house. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated the man who had spent 35 years building software systems at Microsoft, who understood that the best defense was always a perfectly executed offense. Tomorrow morning, they expected to find a confused, vulnerable grandfather ready to sign away his independence. Instead, they were going to discover that this particular prey had very sharp teeth. The phone rang at exactly 7:30 the next morning, jolting me from the restless sleep I had finally managed after Emma's midnight visit. I reached across the bed, muscle memory still expecting to find Margaret there, but my hand met only cold sheets and the harsh reality of widowhood. David's name glowed on the caller ID, and something twisted in my stomach. In the 3 years since Margaret's funeral, my 45-year-old son had never called before 9 a.m. unless there was an emergency. "Dad, good morning." His voice carried an artificial brightness that made my engineering mind immediately suspicious. "I hope I did not wake you." I was already up, I lied, settling back against my pillows while studying the ceiling, where Margaret and I had once planned to install a skylight. "What's on your mind, son?" "Well, Jessica and I were talking, and we realized we have not had a proper family barbecue in ages. You know how much Emma loves your stories about the old Microsoft days. Emma loved those stories, but David and Jessica usually rolled their eyes when I shared memories of building early Windows systems. Something was different about this invitation. That sounds nice, David. When were you thinking, actually, today would be perfect? This afternoon, around 2 o'clock. Jessica is already marinating steaks, and Emma has been asking when she would see Grandpa Bob again. Today. Less than 6 hours after Emma's warning about their midnight meeting. The timeline felt rushed, desperate. That's quite short notice, I said carefully, though every instinct screamed that this barbecue was connected to whatever papers Emma had seen spread across their kitchen table. I know, but the weather forecast shows rain all week, and Jessica really wants to do something special for the family. David's laugh sounded forced metallic. Plus, we have some exciting family news to share with you. Family news. My grip tightened on the phone. What kind of news? Oh, just some plans we have been working on. Ways to make sure everyone is taken care of properly. You know how much we love you, Dad. Those words, spoken with such calculated warmth, sent ice through my veins. I remembered Margaret's final lucid conversation, her warning about David's weakness when someone strong was whispering in his ear. Of course I will be there, I said, making my voice sound pleased and unsuspecting. Should I bring anything? Just yourself, Dad. Just yourself. After hanging up, I sat in the morning silence of my house, a 4-bedroom colonial that Margaret and I had bought in 1998 when my Microsoft stock options finally vested. The walls held 40 years of family photos, but looking at them now, I wondered how many showed genuine love versus calculated performance. I needed information, and I knew exactly who to call. Thomas Bradley answered on the second ring, his voice carrying the professional warmth of someone who had managed wealthy clients for 25 years. We had maintained our friendship through 2 decades of investment strategies and retirement planning. Bob, always good to hear from you. What brings you to call on a Sunday morning, Thomas? I need some advice about portfolio management, but first I have a hypothetical question about banking procedures. I outlined a fictional scenario about adult children researching conservatorship procedures, watching Thomas's responses for any hint of recognition. His answers were thorough, professional, and increasingly concerned. Bob, why are you asking about emergency conservatorship processes? You seem sharper than men half your age. Just curious about options, I said carefully. Have you had many families dealing with these situations recently? Thomas paused, and I could almost hear him weighing client confidentiality against friendship. Funny you should ask. Just last Tuesday, I had a couple asking very specific questions about guardianship procedures for an elderly family member. My coffee mug stopped halfway to my lips. What kind of questions? They knew terminology that most families never encounter unless they are planning something significant. Documentation requirements. Medical competency, evaluations, timeline for court approval. Very thorough research. Could you describe this couple? Well, I probably should not, but they seemed like your son and daughter-in-law. Professional dress mentioned working in tech and marketing. The confirmation hit like a physical blow. David and Jessica had spent Tuesday afternoon researching exactly how to steal my independence with legal precision. Thomas, what would someone need to initiate emergency conservatorship, medical documentation, showing cognitive decline, financial evidence of poor decision-making, and family testimony about concerning behavior? But Bob, why are you really asking these questions? I'll explain everything later, Thomas. Right now, I need to understand how to protect myself from this exact scenario. After hanging up, I spent an hour researching elder financial abuse online. The statistics were staggering. According to the National Council on Aging, older Americans lost $36 billion annually to financial exploitation, and 90% of the time, the perpetrator was a family member or trusted person. I was not just dealing with greedy relatives. I was facing a sophisticated legal strategy designed to strip away my autonomy and assets. At 11:30, I drove to Riverside Shopping Center, ostensibly to buy groceries, but actually to gather intelligence. The parking lot buzzed with Sunday morning activity families loading minivans with weekend supplies. Inside Walmart, I selected items carefully, playing the role of a slightly confused elderly man who might need family assistance soon. But my real purpose was observation, noting which neighbors were shopping, who might serve as witnesses to my apparent competence. Near the pharmacy section, I encountered Mrs. Patterson, from 3 houses down, a retired nurse whose sharp eyes missed nothing in our neighborhood. Bob Mitchell, she said warmly, pushing her cart alongside mine. How are you managing in that big house all by yourself? Oh, you know me, Mrs. Patterson. Still keeping busy with my computer projects. That's wonderful. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. I hope you do not mind me mentioning, but I saw some official-looking people at David's house Wednesday morning. Medical examiner's van in the driveway. Medical examiner's van. My hands gripped the shopping cart handle until my knuckles went white. Really, I hope everything is all right with the family. Oh, I am sure it was nothing serious. Probably just routine health screenings. You know how thorough young families are these days about medical care. But something in her expression suggested she found the Wednesday morning visit unusual enough to remember and mention. Driving home with groceries I did not need. I processed the timeline. Tuesday afternoon, David and Jessica researched conservatorship procedures. Wednesday morning, a medical professional visited their house. Sunday afternoon, they were hosting a family barbecue with important news to share. They had spent a week preparing a legal trap, and I was walking into it in less than 3 hours. But they had made 2 crucial mistakes. First, they had underestimated Emma's intelligence and loyalty. Second, they had forgotten that successful software engineering required thinking 10 steps ahead of any potential system failure. I had built my career anticipating problems before they occurred and designing elegant solutions to complex challenges. Today's challenge was protecting my freedom and fortune from my own family. Time to engineer the perfect defense. I arrived at David's house at exactly 2 o'clock, carrying a bottle of wine and the performance of my life. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across their manicured lawn, the same yard where Emma had learned to ride her bicycle while I ran alongside her, Margaret cheering from the porch swing. Now that porch felt like a stage, and I was about to perform the most important role of my 74 years. Dad, there he is. David's voice boomed across the neighborhood as he bounded down the front steps, his enthusiasm so exaggerated that Mrs. Patterson looked up from her flower garden next door. Come meet Tom and Linda Johnson from down the street. The Johnsons stood near the barbecue grill, drinks in hand, observing everything with the practiced attention of people who had been briefed about today's entertainment. I recognized the setup immediately. Witnesses to my apparent good health before my supposed rapid decline. Bob, so wonderful to finally meet you, Linda Johnson gushed, extending her hand. David talks about you constantly. Such a successful career at Microsoft and still so sharp for your age. For my age. The phrase hung in the air like a setup line in a bad play. Well, I try to stay mentally active, I replied, shaking her hand while noting how her eyes assessed my grip, strength, my posture, my eye contact. Computer programming keeps the brain engaged. That's fantastic, Tom Johnson chimed in. Though David mentioned you have been having some minor memory issues lately. Nothing serious, of course. Memory issues. I had never discussed any memory problems with David because I had none. But apparently, my supposed cognitive decline had already become neighborhood gossip. Oh, just the usual senior moments, I said with a self-deprecating chuckle. Sometimes I forget where I put my reading glasses, but they are usually on top of my head. Everyone laughed a little too loudly at my mild joke, the kind of patronizing amusement reserved for elderly relatives who were becoming endearingly confused. Jessica appeared from the kitchen, carrying a platter of appetizers, her smile bright enough to power the house. Bob, you look absolutely wonderful today. Much more alert than last week. Last week. When I had supposedly been less alert, though, I could not recall any interaction that would support that observation. Thank you, Jessica. These canapés look delicious. I made them especially for you, thinking about your sophisticated tastes. She positioned herself between me and the other guests, her voice carrying just loud enough for everyone to hear. Now you remember how to get to the bathroom, right? Second door down the hallway. I did not need directions to the bathroom in a house I had visited hundreds of times, but Jessica's helpful guidance served its purpose. The Johnsons exchanged meaningful glances, mental notes being filed about Grandpa Bob needing assistance with basic navigation. Throughout the afternoon, David and Jessica orchestrated a masterclass in subtle manipulation. They interrupted my sentences with patient explanations of things I had not misunderstood. They repeated information I had clearly heard the first time. They asked me to recall specific details from 30 years ago, then expressed gentle concern when I could not remember the exact date of a Microsoft product launch. Emma appeared periodically, hovering near me with the protective instincts of a child who knew something terrible was approaching. When Tom Johnson asked about her school performance, she answered politely, but kept glancing between her parents and me as if expecting an explosion. Grandpa Bob, would you like to see my new art project? She asked, during a lull in conversation about my supposed inability to manage household finances. Of course, sweetheart. She led me toward the house, but Jessica intercepted us smoothly. Emma, why don't you show Grandpa your artwork later? We are having such a nice adult conversation right now. adult conversation that I was apparently too diminished to fully appreciate or contribute to meaningfully. Around 4 o'clock, as the afternoon shadows lengthened and the performance reached its crescendo, Jessica excused herself to take a phone call. I watched her walk toward the back of the yard phone pressed to her ear, speaking in low, urgent tones. My hearing had always been excellent, a legacy of 40 years spent in quiet server rooms listening for the subtle sounds that indicated hardware problems. I caught fragments of her conversation words that made my blood pressure spike. Yes, Dr. Martinez, tomorrow morning at 9 sharp. The report needs to show severe cognitive decline requiring immediate intervention. Exactly what we discussed. Dr. Martinez, the same name Emma had mentioned during her midnight warning. I understand the urgency, Jessica continued, her voice carrying across the yard, despite her attempts at discretion. The family cannot wait any longer. His condition is deteriorating rapidly. My condition, the condition I did not have being discussed with a doctor I had never met. Perfect. And you are certain the documentation will support emergency conservatorship proceedings? Excellent. We will see you in the morning. She ended the call and returned to the group, her hostess' smile firmly in place. Sorry about that. Just confirming a medical appointment for tomorrow. Nothing serious, I hope, Linda Johnson said with practiced concern. Oh, just routine senior health monitoring, Jessica replied, her eyes meeting David's across the patio. You know how important it is to stay on top of these things as people age. People like me, apparently. The barbecue continued for another hour, but I had heard enough. They had arranged for Dr. Martinez to provide fraudulent medical documentation supporting their conservatorship petition. Tomorrow morning, a doctor I had never met would examine me and miraculously discover severe cognitive impairment requiring immediate family intervention. The scope of their conspiracy was breathtaking. Legal research, medical fraud, neighbor witnesses, coordinated testimony about my declining capabilities. They had engineered a comprehensive assault on my independence, and they were executing it with military precision. As the afternoon wound down and guests began gathering their belongings, David approached me with another surge of artificial enthusiasm. Dad, I hope you had a wonderful time today. You seemed really engaged and alert. Thank you, son. It was lovely meeting the neighbors. Actually, before you go, Jessica and I wanted to mention something important. He glanced toward his wife, who nodded encouragingly. We have been thinking about ways to help you manage some of the more complicated aspects of daily life. Complicated aspects that I managed perfectly well, but I played along. What kind of help? Well, financial planning can be overwhelming, especially with all the new technology and changing regulations. We thought maybe we could assist with some of the paperwork, make sure all your legal documents are properly organized. Jessica joined the conversation seamlessly. We have been researching the best ways to protect your assets and ensure everything is handled according to your wishes. Your wishes as interpreted by people who had spent the week learning how to override those wishes through legal manipulation. That's very thoughtful of you both, I said, allowing a slight tremor to enter my voice. I have been feeling a bit overwhelmed lately. Maybe some family assistance would be helpful. The relief on their faces was immediate and telling. They had expected resistance, but instead found a confused elderly man grateful for their guidance. Wonderful, David said. How about we meet tomorrow morning to discuss the details, say around 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock. 1 hour after Dr. Martinez would provide the medical documentation they needed to proceed with emergency conservatorship. That sounds perfect, I agreed. I'll look forward to understanding how you can help me. As I drove home through the suburban streets where I had lived for 25 years, I felt the weight of complete betrayal settling over me like a lead blanket. My son and daughter-in-law had spent months planning to steal my freedom and fortune involving medical professionals, legal advisors, and unsuspecting neighbors in their elaborate deception. But they had made one critical error in their otherwise flawless strategy. They had forgotten that the man they were trying to deceive had spent 35 years at Microsoft debugging complex systems and identifying the single point of failure that could bring down an entire network. Tomorrow morning they would discover that their perfect plan had a very significant bug, and I was about to exploit it. The moment I returned home from the barbecue, I transformed from confused grandfather into the methodical engineer who had once debugged critical systems for millions of Windows users worldwide. My home office overlooking the garden Margaret had planted became mission control for the most important project of my life. I opened my laptop and created a new folder labeled Estate Planning Research. If anyone checked my browser history, they would find exactly what they expected: an elderly man researching his own mortality and asset protection. But my real work began with a different kind of research entirely. Dr. Roberto Martinez appeared in multiple online directories, but his credentials told a troubling story. Medical license suspended in California for billing fraud, relocated to Nevada, then Arizona, always staying one step ahead of medical board investigations, currently practicing in our state with a temporary license under review. Jessica had found the perfect accomplice, a desperate doctor willing to fabricate diagnoses for cash. I downloaded his photo licensing history and disciplinary records. Then I did something that would have impressed my old Microsoft security team. I set up a digital surveillance operation that would make the FBI proud. My iPhone had recording capabilities that most 74-year-olds never discovered. Voice memos, video recording, even apps designed for exactly this situation. I spent an hour learning features I had never needed before practicing until I could activate recording without looking at the screen. Next, I opened my business contact database, a treasure trove of relationships built over 4 decades in technology. Sarah Chen, my notary, answered immediately despite the Sunday evening hour. Sarah, I need emergency notary services tomorrow morning at 9:15. Family financial documents that cannot wait. Of course, Bob. What type of documents are we handling? Estate planning materials, possibly some medical directives. It might be a sensitive family situation requiring your professional discretion. You know you can count on that. I'll bring my seal and journal. Sarah had notarized hundreds of contracts during my Microsoft years. She understood irregular pressure tactics and coercion better than most attorneys. Thomas Bradley was my next call. As Bank of America's senior vice president, his presence would add considerable weight to whatever confrontation awaited me tomorrow. Thomas, could you stop by my house tomorrow morning around 9:30? After our conversation today, I think we need to review my entire portfolio in detail. Absolutely, Bob. Given what we discussed about financial management assistance programs, I believe a comprehensive review would be wise. Should I bring documentation, please? And Thomas, you might find tomorrow's meeting quite educational. He chuckled, unaware that his education would involve witnessing attempted elder fraud in real time. My final call required more delicate handling. Michael Torres had been my neighbor for 15 years before joining the FBI's white-collar crime division. We maintained our friendship through occasional barbecues and holiday gatherings. Mike, I hope I'm not interrupting your Sunday evening, but I need advice about a hypothetical situation involving medical fraud and elderly exploitation. Bob, you know I can't provide legal advice, but I'm always willing to listen as a friend. I outlined a carefully fictional scenario about an elderly person being targeted for financial exploitation through fraudulent medical diagnoses. Mike's responses grew increasingly serious as I described the legal mechanics involved. This hypothetical situation describes federal crimes, Bob. Medical fraud conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, If someone had evidence of such activities, they would need to contact law enforcement immediately. What kind of evidence would be required? Recorded conversations showing conspiracy documentation of fraudulent medical examinations, proof of financial exploitation patterns. The Justice Department takes these cases very seriously, especially when they involve licensed medical professionals. Hypothetically, how quickly could law enforcement respond to such evidence? If the evidence was compelling and immediate danger existed, we could move within hours. Emergency conservatorship proceedings can be stopped with proper documentation of fraud. I thanked Mike for his hypothetical guidance and hung up, knowing that tomorrow's hypothetical situation was about to become very real. Returning to my computer, I spent 2 hours documenting everything. Bank statements showing the $125,000 I had provided David and Jessica over 4 years. Screenshots of Dr. Martinez's dubious medical history. Timestamps of Jessica's phone conversations. A detailed timeline of their conspiracy. But documentation alone would not be enough. I needed to catch them in the act. I walked through my house identifying optimal recording positions for tomorrow's confrontation. The living room offered the best acoustics with minimal background noise and clear sightlines. I practiced positioning my phone to capture both audio and video without appearing suspicious. Then I did something that felt like betrayal, even knowing what they had planned. I called David. "Son, I've been thinking about our conversation today, and I'm grateful for your offer to help with my financial management." His relief was audible through the phone. "Dad, that's wonderful. Jessica will be so pleased. We can meet first thing tomorrow morning. Actually, I've arranged for my notary to come by around 9:15 to make everything official and legal. You know how important proper documentation is." "Perfect. And Dad, thank you for trusting us with this responsibility." Trust. The word tasted bitter, but I managed to sound grateful rather than disgusted. After hanging up, I opened my safe and retrieved documents I hoped never to need. My original will, leaving everything to David with provisions for Emma's education. Investment statements showing my actual net worth far higher than they suspected. Property deeds for rental properties they did not know existed. Tomorrow, these documents would either protect my legacy or become evidence in a criminal prosecution. I spent the evening reviewing every detail of their conspiracy, looking for weaknesses in their strategy. They had researched conservatorship law, arranged fraudulent medical documentation, recruited witness testimony, and prepared legal papers. Their plan was sophisticated, thorough, and almost certainly effective against a typical elderly victim. But they had made several critical assumptions that would prove fatal to their scheme. First, they assumed I was too trusting to investigate their activities. Second, they believed I lacked the technical knowledge to gather evidence against them. Third, they expected me to be isolated without professional contacts who could recognize and respond to elder fraud. Most importantly, they had forgotten that successful software engineering required anticipating every possible failure mode and designing countermeasures before deployment. Tomorrow morning, they would discover that their target had spent the weekend reverse engineering their entire operation. At 11:30 p.m., exactly 24 hours after Emma's midnight visit, I received a text message from an unknown number, but I recognized the writing style immediately. "Grandpa, tomorrow is the day they talked about. I'm scared. I love you." I replied immediately. "Everything will be okay, sweetheart. Trust me." Her response came quickly. "I do trust you. You're the strongest person I know." The strongest person she knew. For 40 years, I had been underestimated by competitors who saw a quiet engineer rather than a strategic thinker. David and Jessica were about to make the same mistake. I walked to Margaret's portrait on the mantel, the formal photograph we had taken for our 40th anniversary. Her eyes seemed to watch me with the same determination she had shown during her final battle with cancer. "Tomorrow, honey," I whispered to her memory. "Tomorrow, they learn what happens when they threaten our family." Outside, the suburban night was quiet and peaceful. Across the fence, David and Jessica were probably celebrating their imminent victory, counting money they would never see, planning a future that would never exist. In 8 hours, their perfect crime would collide with perfect justice. I could hardly wait. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, the kind of October day that reminded you winter was coming, whether you were ready or not. I had been awake since 5 a.m. reviewing my strategy one final time, while coffee brewed in the kitchen Margaret and I had remodeled together 15 years ago. At exactly 8:45, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a man in his 60s carrying a worn leather medical bag, his appearance slightly disheveled despite the early hour. Dr. Roberto Martinez looked exactly like his online photos, but seeing him in person confirmed what his disciplinary records had suggested. This was a desperate man willing to compromise his medical oath for money. I activated my phone's recording app, slipping the device into my shirt pocket, with the microphone positioned perfectly. 40 years of debugging complex systems had taught me that the most critical evidence often came from conversations people thought were private. "Dr. Martinez, I presume. Please come in." "Mr. Mitchell." "Yes, I'm here for your medical evaluation." He glanced nervously around my foyer, taking in the expensive artwork and furniture that spoke of considerable wealth. "Your daughter-in-law, Jessica, arranged this consultation." "Of course. She's been worried about my memory lately." We settled in my living room where I had arranged the furniture to optimize recording angles. Dr. Martinez opened his bag and pulled out forms that looked official but felt fraudulent, like a movie prop designed to fool audiences rather than serve actual medical purposes. "Now, Mr. Mitchell, I understand you've been experiencing some cognitive difficulties recently. Memory problems, confusion about daily tasks, that sort of thing." "I suppose so," I replied, allowing my voice to carry the uncertain tone of someone genuinely worried about their mental state. "Sometimes I forget where I put things or what day it is." Dr. Martinez nodded sympathetically while scribbling notes that would eventually support his predetermined diagnosis. "Can you tell me what year it is?" 2024, I think. Or maybe 23. These questions are making me nervous. "That's perfectly understandable." "Now, can you remember what you had for breakfast this morning?" I paused, pretending to struggle with a question that should have been simple. "Cereal, I think. Or was it toast?" "I'm sorry, doctor, but my mind feels foggy lately." For the next 20 minutes, Dr. Martinez guided me through an examination designed to document cognitive impairment that would justify immediate family intervention. He asked increasingly complex questions about dates, names, and events, expressing gentle concern when I provided confused or incorrect answers. But what he did not know was that my confused grandfather performance was being recorded in high definition, capturing every leading question and predetermined conclusion that would form the basis of his fraudulent medical report. "Mr. Mitchell, based on what I'm observing today, I believe you're experiencing significant cognitive decline that requires immediate family support. The technical term is moderate dementia with rapid progression." Dementia. The word hung in the air like a death sentence, even though we both knew it was completely fabricated. "Is that serious?" "Doctor, I'm afraid so. Without proper supervision, you could make financial decisions that might not be in your best interest. Fortunately, your family is prepared to help manage these challenges." My family. The same family that had paid him to write this diagnosis. What kind of help would I need? Martinez consulted his notes, though we both knew he was reading from a script rather than making medical recommendations. "Your son and daughter-in-law should probably handle your financial affairs. Make sure all your legal documents are properly organized. Think of it as having a safety net that would catch all my assets while I disappeared into some assisted living facility. That sounds reasonable, I said, maintaining the confused grandfather act, while my phone continued recording every word of this medical fraud. When would this help need to start? Immediately. In fact, I believe emergency intervention might be necessary. Your condition could deteriorate rapidly without proper family oversight. Emergency intervention. The magic words that would allow them to bypass normal legal safeguards and seize control of my life within hours rather than weeks. Doctor, could you explain exactly what my condition means for my ability to make decisions about my own life? This question seemed to surprise him, as if elderly patients were not supposed to ask about the implications of their diagnoses. Well, Mr. Mitchell, dementia affects judgment, memory, and decision-making capacity. For your own protection, important choices should probably be made by family members who have your best interests at heart, and who determines when I'm no longer capable of making my own decisions. Medical professionals like myself working with family members and legal advisors. It's a collaborative process designed to protect vulnerable individuals. Vulnerable individuals like me, apparently. Though Dr. Martinez had no idea how vulnerable his position was about to become. I understand, doctor. And you'll be providing documentation about my condition to my family, absolutely. I'll have a comprehensive report ready within the hour detailing my findings and recommendations for immediate family intervention. He began packing his medical bag, clearly eager to complete this unethical transaction and collect his payment. I walked him to the door, maintaining the confused grandfather persona until his car disappeared around the corner. The moment he left, I called Jessica. Jessica, Dr. Martinez just finished my examination, and I'm quite concerned about what he told me. Oh, Bob, what did he say? Her voice carried perfectly orchestrated worry, mixed with barely concealed excitement. He mentioned something about dementia and needing family help with important decisions. I'm feeling very confused and scared about what this means. Don't worry, we'll take care of everything. David and I will be right over to discuss how we can help you through this difficult time. Would you mind bringing those papers you mentioned yesterday? I think I'm ready to let the family handle the complicated legal matters. Of course, Bob. We'll bring everything you need to sign. Just try to stay calm until we get there. After hanging up, I spent 10 minutes reviewing the recorded conversation with Dr. Martinez. Every leading question, every predetermined conclusion, every fraudulent medical opinion was captured in crystal clear audio. Federal prosecutors would have a field day with evidence this comprehensive. At 9:15 sharp, Sarah Chen arrived with her notary supplies and professional demeanor. I had worked with Sarah for over a decade, and she knew me as a sharp, detail-oriented businessman. Seeing me today would provide stark contrast to whatever story David and Jessica planned to tell about my declining mental state. Good morning, Bob. You look well today. Much better than you sounded on the phone yesterday. Thank you, Sarah. I've been feeling clearer this morning, which is why I wanted to handle these important documents while my mind is sharp. We arranged her notary materials on my dining room table, positioning everything to capture the upcoming confrontation on video. Sarah was accustomed to family tensions around estate planning, but she had never witnessed anything like what was about to unfold. Thomas Bradley arrived at 9:30, carrying his banker's portfolio and the authority that came with 25 years of managing substantial wealth. His presence would add professional credibility to whatever evidence I was about to present. Bob, how are you feeling today? Thomas studied my face carefully, noting my clear eyes and confident posture. You seem remarkably alert for someone supposedly experiencing cognitive difficulties. Funny thing about that, Thomas. I'm feeling sharper than I have in months. Almost like someone's been trying to convince me I was more confused than I actually am. Before Thomas could respond, car doors slammed in my driveway. David and Jessica had arrived for their moment of triumph, carrying legal documents and dreams of financial control they would never achieve. They walked toward my front door with the confidence of people who believed they had already won, completely unaware that they were about to star in the most devastating performance of their lives. I looked at Sarah and Thomas, my professional witnesses positioned perfectly to document everything that was about to happen. "Showtime," I said quietly, and opened the door to my son and daughter-in-law's destruction. "Dad, you look wonderful this morning." David's voice carried across my living room like a poorly rehearsed line from a community theater production. Much more alert than yesterday. Jessica appeared beside him, clutching their leather portfolio of legal documents, her smile bright enough to power the entire neighborhood. "Thank you for coming so quickly," I replied, gesturing toward the dining room where Sarah and Thomas sat with their professional materials spread across the mahogany table Margaret had chosen for our 25th anniversary. "I have some people here to help us make everything official." David paused in the doorway, his confidence flickering as he noticed the notary seal and banking documents that suggested a level of preparation he had not expected. "Dad, who are these people?" Sarah Chen, my notary, and Thomas Bradley from Bank of America. "I wanted professional witnesses for such important family decisions." Jessica's grip tightened on her portfolio, but she recovered quickly. "How thoughtful of you, Bob. Professional assistance will make everything so much more legitimate." The word legitimate hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. I watched her eyes assess Sarah and Thomas, calculating whether their presence helped or hindered the conspiracy she had orchestrated. "Please, everyone, have a seat." I settled behind my desk, the same position from which I had negotiated million-dollar software contracts during my Microsoft years. Today's negotiation would be far more personal, and the stakes infinitely higher. David opened their portfolio with practiced efficiency, extracting power of attorney forms that looked expensive and official. The highlighted signature lines and witness requirements spoke of serious legal consultation, the kind that cost thousands of dollars and produced ironclad documents. "Dad, these papers will simply make it easier for us to help you manage the complicated aspects of daily life. Banking, medical decisions, legal matters that might be overwhelming for someone in your condition." My condition. I leaned back in my chair, noting how Thomas's eyebrows rose at the phrase. "Someone in your condition" suggested medical documentation that justified these legal arrangements. What condition would that be? Son David and Jessica exchanged the briefest glance, the same wordless communication I had observed throughout their conspiracy. "Well, Dr. Martinez completed his evaluation this morning, and he identified some concerning cognitive issues that require immediate family support." "Dr. Martinez." I opened my desk drawer and pulled out my phone, placing it on the desk where everyone could see the screen. "Interesting that you mentioned Dr. Martinez. Would you like to hear what he told me during our examination?" The room went completely silent. Sarah and Thomas leaned forward with professional curiosity, while David and Jessica went rigid with what I recognized as the first stirrings of panic. I pressed play on the audio recording. Dr. Martinez's voice filled the room with crystal clarity. "Mr. Mitchell, based on what I'm observing today, I believe you're experiencing significant cognitive decline that requires immediate family support. The technical term is moderate dementia with rapid progression." My own voice responded with the confused uncertainty I had performed so perfectly. "Is that serious?" "Doctor, I'm afraid so. Without proper supervision, you could make financial decisions that might not be in your best interest. Fortunately, your family is prepared to help manage these challenges." Jessica's face had gone completely white. David stared at the phone as if it were a venomous snake coiled on my desk, ready to strike. The recording continued for several more minutes, capturing every fraudulent medical opinion and predetermined conclusion in devastating detail. When the audio ended, the silence stretched like a taut wire. Thomas was the first to speak, his banker's training, helping him process what he had just heard. "Bob, are you saying this medical examination was conducted under false pretenses? I'm saying that Dr. Martinez diagnosed me with moderate dementia, despite the fact that I'm demonstrating perfect cognitive function right now." I turned to Sarah, who was taking notes with the methodical precision of someone documenting potential criminal activity. "Sarah, in your professional opinion, do I appear to be suffering from any form of cognitive impairment?" "Absolutely not. Your speech is clear, your reasoning is logical, and your planning for this meeting shows sophisticated organizational skills. You're sharper than most people half your age." David found his voice, though it came out strangled and desperate. "Dad, maybe Dr. Martinez made a mistake. Medical diagnoses can be complicated." "Can they?" I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward the room. "Because Dr. Martinez has quite an interesting medical history. His license was suspended in California for billing fraud. He relocated to Nevada, then Arizona, always staying ahead of medical board investigations. Currently practicing here with a temporary license under review for ethical violations. The evidence mounted like debris from an avalanche." Thomas studied the screen with the analytical mind of someone who had spent decades identifying financial fraud. "This suggests a pattern of professional misconduct," he said quietly. "Any diagnosis from this individual would be highly questionable." Jessica finally found her voice, though. Desperation made it crack like breaking glass. "Bob, we were just trying to help you. We love you and want to make sure you're protected. Protected from what I stood slowly feeling every year of my age, but also every ounce of accumulated wisdom and experience. From making my own decisions about my own money, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the bank statements I had printed Sunday night. $125,000 over 4 years. Your mortgage payments, car loans, Emma's private school tuition. Every payment documented and dated." Sarah and Thomas reviewed the financial records with professional attention, while David and Jessica watched their carefully constructed narrative collapse around them. "You've been conditioning me to say yes to increasingly larger financial requests," I continued, my voice carrying the authority I had once used to manage teams of engineers. "Training me to become dependent on your approval rather than making independent decisions." The room felt charged with electricity like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. David slumped in his chair, the weight of exposure finally crushing his defenses. "Dad, please. We made mistakes, but we can fix this. We love you." "Love." I walked to the window overlooking Margaret's garden, the roses she had planted blooming, despite her absence. "Love doesn't involve conspiracy to commit fraud. Love doesn't require researching emergency conservatorship procedures behind someone's back." Thomas spoke with the measured tone of someone delivering official judgment. "The documentation suggests systematic financial exploitation combined with medical fraud to support illegal asset seizure. These are federal crimes." Jessica shot to her feet, her composure finally cracking completely. "This is insane. We're his family. We deserve some consideration for everything we've done for him." "Everything you've done," my voice rose for the first time during the confrontation. "You mean accepting $125,000 while planning to steal millions more?" Sarah had been documenting everything in her notary journal, creating an official record that would support any future legal proceedings. "In my professional opinion," she said carefully, "this appears to be a sophisticated attempt at elder financial abuse using fraudulent medical documentation." The front door opened suddenly, and Emma's voice echoed through the house. "Grandpa Bob, are you okay?" I heard loud voices. She appeared in the doorway, still wearing her school backpack, her 9-year-old face creased with worry. The sight of her innocent concern in the middle of this adult devastation broke something loose in my chest. Everything is fine, sweetheart. Your parents and I are just having an important conversation about honesty and family. Emma's eyes moved between her parents' stricken faces and the professional witnesses documenting their conspiracy. Even at 9 years old, she understood that something fundamental had changed in our family dynamic. Mom, Dad, why do you look so scared? David buried his face in his hands, while Jessica struggled to maintain some semblance of parental authority. Emma, go to your room. This is adult business. Actually, I said gently, Emma should hear this, because these decisions will affect her future too. I knelt to Emma's eye level, the same position where she had warned me about this conspiracy just 36 hours earlier. Sweetheart, your parents made some very bad choices about money and honesty. There have to be consequences for those choices. Are they in trouble? Her voice carried the wisdom of a child who had been forced to mature too quickly. Yes, they are. But Emma, I want you to know that your future is completely safe. I've made arrangements to ensure you can go to any college you want, study anything that interests you. Her eyes brightened despite the chaos surrounding us. Even veterinary school, especially veterinary school. And if you change your mind and want to be an engineer like your grandfather, or a teacher, or start your own business, there will be money for that too. What about Mom and Dad? They're going to have to learn to take care of themselves without taking advantage of other people. I looked at David and Jessica, who were watching this conversation, with expressions of complete defeat. And if they can prove they've changed, maybe our family can heal from this hurt. But even if they don't, you and I will always have each other. Emma hugged me tightly, and I felt Margaret's presence in that embrace. 3 generations of love continuing despite betrayal and broken trust. Behind us, Sarah was completing her documentation, while Thomas gathered evidence that would soon find its way to federal investigators. The conspiracy that had taken months to plan was unraveling in real time, destroyed by the simple application of truth to lies. David and Jessica left without another word, taking their useless legal documents and shattered dreams. They would spend the coming weeks dealing with law enforcement medical board investigations and the complete destruction of their financial schemes. But in my living room, holding my granddaughter while professional witnesses documented justice being served, I felt something I had not experienced since Margaret's death. Peace. The peace that comes from protecting what matters most, even when it requires destroying what you once believed was family. 3 weeks after the confrontation that destroyed my son's criminal conspiracy, I sat in my home office reviewing documents that would have seemed impossible just a month earlier. FBI case files, medical board investigation reports, and custody arrangements that officially made Emma my primary ward pending her parents' legal resolution. Special Agent Michael Torres had been thorough in his investigation of the elder fraud case I had handed him on a silver platter. Dr. Roberto Martinez was arrested within 48 hours of my providing the recorded evidence, charged with medical fraud conspiracy to commit elder abuse and violation of federal health care regulations. His temporary medical license was permanently revoked, and he faced up to 15 years in federal prison. The case had attracted attention from the Justice Department's Elder Justice Initiative, becoming a textbook example of how sophisticated financial predators targeted vulnerable seniors through coordinated legal and medical fraud. My recorded conversations with Dr. Martinez were being used to train federal investigators in recognizing similar schemes. David and Jessica faced their own legal consequences, though their cooperation with federal investigators had earned them plea bargain considerations. David was sentenced to 2 years probation, mandatory gambling addiction treatment, and community service speaking at senior centers about elder financial abuse. The gambling debts that had driven his desperation totaled over $80,000, money borrowed against credit cards and personal loans he could never repay. Jessica received a harsher sentence due to her role as the conspiracy's architect. 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years probation and permanent prohibition from working in any capacity involving elderly care or financial services. She had orchestrated every detail of their scheme, from researching conservatorship laws, to recruiting Dr. Martinez, to manipulating neighborhood witnesses. Their divorce was finalized within 6 months, Jessica relocating to another state, where her criminal record would not be immediately recognized. David remained in town working at a technology company and slowly rebuilding his relationship with Emma through supervised visitation and family counseling. Emma thrived in the stability of living with me. Her grades improved dramatically once she was no longer carrying the burden of adult secrets about money and deception. She joined the school's robotics club, discovering a natural talent for programming that reminded me of my early Microsoft days. We established routines that Margaret would have loved. Saturday morning pancakes, while Emma told me about her week at school. Sunday afternoon, walks through the neighborhood visiting Mrs. Patterson's garden and helping her with computer problems. Evening sessions where I taught Emma basic coding principles using the same patience I had once applied to training new engineers. The financial arrangements were straightforward and ironclad. $3.8 million went into an educational trust administered by Bank of America, with Thomas Bradley serving as professional trustee. Emma would have access to funds for education, from elementary school through graduate degrees, with additional provisions for entrepreneurial ventures or career changes. David received a conditional inheritance of $50,000 payable only after completing gambling treatment and maintaining steady employment for 1 full year. The conditions were designed to encourage genuine rehabilitation, rather than simply providing money that would enable continued destructive behavior. My new will included specific provisions preventing any future conservatorship challenges. Multiple medical evaluations from independent physicians confirmed my complete mental competence, creating legal barriers that would protect me from similar schemes by other potential predators. But the most meaningful change was watching Emma discover her own potential without the shadow of family dysfunction. She asked thoughtful questions about money ethics and family relationships that showed remarkable maturity for a 10-year-old. I answered honestly, explaining that some people make terrible choices when they become desperate, but that love means protecting each other from those bad decisions. 6 months after the FBI arrests, Emma and I were working together on a programming project in my office when she asked the question I had been expecting. "Grandpa Bob, why did Dad and Mom try to hurt you?" I set down my coffee mug and chose my words carefully. Sometimes people make dangerous choices when they are scared about money. But family love means protecting each other even from those bad choices. Will Dad get better? We will hope so, sweetheart. But you and I will be fine no matter what happens. She nodded with the wisdom of someone who had learned early that adults could disappoint you, but that some adults could also be trusted completely. Later that evening, I found her wearing Margaret's pearl necklace while doing homework at the kitchen table, 3 generations of women connected across time through jewelry and love. The house that had once felt empty after Margaret's death now buzzed with the energy of a child discovering the world. Emma's laughter echoed through rooms that had been silent too long, and her questions about everything from computer programming to college veterinary programs filled our conversations with hope rather than regret. Justice had been served, but more importantly, family had been redefined around protection rather than exploitation. 6 months after that nightmare, I want to share something crucial with every senior watching this story. What happened to me is not rare. It is an epidemic. According to the National Council on Aging, older Americans lose $36 billion annually to financial abuse. 90% of the time it is committed by someone they love and trust. Here are the warning signs I ignored, and you should not. Family members suddenly showing unusual interest in your finances. Requests for money that escalate in frequency and amount. Suggestions that you are too old to manage your own affairs. New people being introduced to handle your complicated finances. Family pushing for quick decisions about wills or property transfers. The protection strategies that saved me. Never sign documents under pressure, even from family. Always have a trusted, independent witness for major financial decisions. Keep your bank statements private and review them monthly yourself. Maintain relationships outside your immediate family who can spot concerning changes. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Most importantly, remember this. Your money is your money. You earned it, you saved it, and you decide how it is used. Love does not come with a price tag, and real family does not put conditions on their affection. If you are watching this and thinking this sounds like my situation, do not wait. Call your local adult protective services, contact an elder law attorney, or reach out to the Elder Care Locator at 1-800-677-1116. Emma and I are living proof that it is never too late to protect yourself and the people you really love. Sometimes the greatest act of love is saying no to those who would take advantage of that love. Your story does not have to end with betrayal. It can end with wisdom, strength, and the family members who truly deserve your legacy.